Hi all, I have a very interesting game of the young Magnus Carlsen to show you today. This was back in 2003. Magnus was playing with the black pieces against Daniel Jacobson Kovachev. Let's see how this game went. So this is in the NTG Grand Prix, Group A 2003. E4 from Kovachev. Magnus replies G6, so the modern defense. This is a very interesting move that I've used a lot actually in online chess. Top super grandmasters might not play this frequently, but it doesn't mean that club players and for online chess it's a very interesting move to try out. D4, bishop G7. So Magnus is letting the opponent occupy the center. After D6 we have F4, the Austrian attack, and now A6. This has been a recommendation of Tiger Hillip-Pedersen, and it's a very, very interesting move. It has some ideas like b5, bishop b7, maybe knight d7, c5 later to strike at white's center to put more pressure on the d4 pawn and to kind of double fianchetto both bishops, potentially striking across the center. So black's got a hyper-modern, very hyper-modern plan here. Let white occupy, and later they could be undermined and destroyed perhaps at the center. We have though white crossing the plans here with a4 preventing b5. We have now knight d7, and Magnus is going for the Hippo setup with knight d7. After knight f3 we see b6, bishop d3, e6. So full-blown Hippo is in progress with the knights in the center and the bishops fianchettoed. This is the Hippo formation after castling knight e7. You might think, well, hold on a sec. White's really geared up for f5. That really does seem like a tempting break here. White does play f5. Magnus takes with the e pawn here. E takes, and now plays bishop b7. We have f takes g. Maybe slightly controversial, you might think, because doesn't that activate the rook? Is this rook that useful though? We have bishop e3, knight f6, queen d2, and now queen d7. Interesting. Magnus doesn't routinely castle kingside. If castling kingside, maybe white can play bishop h6, and this position is going to be quite comfortable for white, maybe even with d5. This kind of tactic is very interesting to consider, giving white a nice advantage. So you can see without the dark square bishop, with this one blocked, this is a horrible scenario which could be it's an outcome to avoid from this opening position. So queen d7 sets those possibilities of bishop h6 aside, because the rook is now controlling the h6 square, preventing that exchange, and maybe the rook's still going to be useful actively on h8 anyway, so why not try and castle queenside? Some questions are posed about this though. Rook a e1, castling queenside now, and the first question posed is the battery move queen e2 hitting the a6 pawn. Is Magnus forced to move this pawn? Actually, he plays something else. I wonder if you can guess Magnus's move in this position. If I give you 5 seconds to pause here, what would you play with black? It's an interesting practical move. Okay, Magnus's move, and this might not be technically the best, is this move. So giving up the a6 pawn, taking out the sting though of white's attack in practical terms, and also setting up some nice pressure on e3 and potentially looking at undermining the dark squares. An alternative a5 is a concession of the b5 square, and say bishop b5, c6, this kind of thing where that's hitting now e7. This is a little bit unpleasant. White's getting a small edge, but even here maybe this isn't so bad for white, this kind of position. Technically it's about equal. So okay, so knight e5, a pawn sacrifice. What's the idea? Well, just putting pressure on e3. We have taking on b7, and you can see a lot of the white attack has been reduced, and black has the option of maybe even rook a8 if needed. But actually now Magnus goes for an attack of his own. He plays knight takes after rook takes, taking, and now rook e8, so he's getting first to the center with tempo. Now knight g4, and there are some interesting ideas if left alone, maybe even bishop h6, trying to use that e3 like that. We have rook a1. Already it's uncomfortable for white in this position. If rook e1 trying to challenge that e file, then maybe just taking and then queen e7, and this is uncomfortable off the check, welcoming the queens coming off, because this is a very nice position. Black's at least equal there. And if we look at this again with knight e1, then that would mean d4 drops, and that's very, very comfortable and much better for black actually. So we have rook a1, still with some dangers poised at the king here, without that bishop defending the king. We have knight e3, but this is the counter-attack because it's looking at g2. So queen g4 is now ripe to threaten mate. a5, queen g4, so both sides are attacking each other quite violently. Queen e2 coming to defense. If queen d2, maybe this is slightly better, this idea, queen d2, because it holds d4. And for example, knight c4, a6 check, white should be okay in this scenario. But with queen e2, this is slightly less accurate. And we have bishop takes d4 now, and maybe white thought he was setting a cunning trap here. So maybe he thought this was a cunning move, rook a4, so pinning that bishop, and provoking a horrible move from black potentially. And white still got this big attack against the king. But Magnus plays a key move here which his opponent must have overlooked. So what's the key crushing move in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, interrupt the rook. Knight c4 is a disconnection of that rook to d4. It's discovered check, and it's also hitting the queen. It's all over. After knight takes d4, queen takes d4 check, and this is all over. White apparently had a time forfeit here, but if white plays queen f2, then can you see what black could play here? Okay, just checkmate. Yeah, the power of the pin piece is illusionary. Just, yeah, let's checkmate there. And here, if the king moves, of course, then we can just take the queen. So yeah, the game ended here. So the young Magnus kind of using the Hippo formation after that very provocative modern defense move. But we're going to see a few examples of the modern defense. So these games we're going to look at in the next few days are in celebration of an amazing course. There's a free short and sweet version of the course by Vyacheslav Nemets. So you might want to check that out on Kingscrusher TV/modern. So a very, very strong, talented player who's also a major contributor to Cora, one of the greatest contributors there. So he's really got a huge passion for the game. I'll definitely, check out this free short and sweet course offering, as well as the main course which it relates to. Okay, thanks very much.